Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Today we're going to talk about learner characteristics, and this is our sixth lecture. Um, so, so what are learner characteristics? They are differences between learners which influence their attitude to learning language and how they learn it. These differences influence how they respond to different teaching styles and approaches in the classroom and how successful they are at learning a language. The differences include a learner's motivation, their personality, language level, learning style, learning strategies, age, and past language learning experience. Okay, before we continue, I would like to know your opinion on one question. So, the question is, how can the ways in which you like to learn, the ways you have learned the language in the past, and your age influence how you prefer to learn a language now? You can answer this question with respect to your own personality, or you can just, give me the whole, abstract answer on, generally speaking about anyone. It's absolutely a free form. You can type it here, or you can send me a voice message in Contact where you discover this question. Okay, let's go on. So, when we talk about different learning styles, so what are these? Learning styles are the ways in which a learner naturally prefers to take in, process, and remember information and skills. So our learning style influences how we like to learn and how we learn best. Well, experts have suggested several different ways of classifying learning styles. Well, they relate to the physical sense we prefer to use to learn, uh, our way of interacting with other people, and our style of thinking. So here are some commonly mentioned learning styles. Visual, the learner learns best through seeing. Auditory, the learner learns best through hearing. Kinesthetic, the learner learns best through using the body. Group, the learner learns best through working with others. Individual, the learner learns best through working alone. Reflective, the learner learns best when given time to consider choices. And impulsive, so the learner learns best when able to respond immediately. You can see from these descriptions how learners with different learning styles learn in different ways and need to be taught in different ways. We must remember, though, that learners may not fall exactly into any one category of learning style, that different cultures may use some different learning styles more than others, and that learners may change or develop their learning styles. Okay, now to learning strategies. So what are they? They are the ways chosen and used by learners to learn language. They include ways to help ourselves identify what we need to learn, processing new language, and work with other people to learn. Using the right strategy at the right time can help us learn the language better and help to make us more independent or autonomous learners. So here we're going to consider some examples of learning strategies. Well, repeating new words in your head until you remember them, that's a strategy. Experimenting or taking risks by using newly learned language in conversations, like you haven't learned the words a lot, but you're already trying to implement them into your conversation and trying to see how it will work out. Guessing the meaning of unknown words, predicting from the context, for example, or from what the word looks like. Asking the teacher or others to say what they think about your user language. Starting to use the foreign language as much as possible by talking to tourists, or if you're a tourist, talking to the local people, any sort of native speakers, recording yourself speaking, and then listening to yourself and judging and correcting your pronunciation. Asking a speaker to repeat what they have said, deciding what area of vocabulary you need to learn, and then learning that. Think about how to remember all the new words you meet in each lesson, and then deciding to write each new one on a separate card. Have you tried that? Paraphrasing, using other language to say what you want to say. So different learners use different strategies. Experts think that the strategies that learners use most successfully depend on their personality and learning style. This means there are no best strategies, but research shows that using strategies definitely makes learning more successful, and that learners can be trained to use strategies. This is my favorite learning strategy, by the way. Okay, now one more concept I would like to point out is maturity. So it involves becoming grown up physically, mentally, and emotionally. Children, teenagers, and adults have different learning characteristics and therefore learn in different ways. Here are some of the main differences in maturity that influence language learning. So let's have a look. Well, we'll have three categories like children, teenagers, and adults. Of course, the borders between these categories are flexible, and on the most, they are just generalizations. But still, we can figure out some tendencies. So let's have a look at that. Children need to move a lot, right? While teenagers, they are just starting to keep still for longer periods. But anyway, they have to move, and adults are typically able to keep still for longer periods of time, for the whole lesson, for example. Children can concentrate for shorter periods, so the concentration span is very short. While teenagers, concentration is developing, it's not stable, it's kind of transition. And adults can concentrate for longer periods of time. Children learn through experience, while teenagers are beginning to learn in abstract ways, that is, they're thinking as well as experiencing, right? And adults learn in more abstract ways. What does it give us as teachers? So it means it's really kind of a stupid idea to try to explain some abstract rule to a kid. So it's better just to show the kid how it works. I mean, to just give him some real speech, and so that the kid will be able to imitate that from you. Whereas adults tend to be instructed on how the language works. And teenagers are kind of in between, they are again transitioning from a kid to an adult. Children are not very able to control and plan their own behavior. You should consider that. So they are not always responsible for their own actions. Teenagers begin to control and plan their behavior, and adults are usually able to control, but of course it's not like 100% the case, of course. Children are not afraid of making mistakes or taking risks, and that is very nice sometimes for language learning. Teenagers may worry about what others think of them, and that's where we've got this, language barrier, and where we've got these shy students, and so on and so forth. And adults, they are not so willing to make mistakes or take risks, so they are the most introverted, the most closed target audience. It's the most perfectionist, so to say. It's really hard for them to make mistakes, to admit their own mistakes, and to deal with their own mistakes. Children are not aware of themselves and or their actions. This is something I have already mentioned. You can't blame the children for what they do sometimes, because they're not fully responsible for that. They're impulsive. Teenagers sometimes uncomfortably aware of themselves and or of their actions. I mean, sometimes they may feel kind of discomfort with what they do. They tend to get some, stereotypical behavior. They tend to think what is cool, what is not cool about what they do. And again, it needs some management. Adults are aware of themselves and of their actions mostly. And in this case, it's kind of easier to predict and it's kind of easier to be dealing with. Children pay attention to meaning in language mostly, whereas teenagers start paying attention to form as well, and adults are mostly concentrated on form. Um, Children have limited experience of life, so that's why if you've got a 4-year-old kid in your group, like, have you ever, questions would not work for this kid because the experience of life is very short, right? The teenagers are beginning to increase their experience of life, but still it's typically quite short. It depends on the circumstances, of course. Adults have experience of life, that's why they're discussing their life. They have got opinions because they have time to formulate their opinions, and they like sharing their experiences with others. A really productive atmosphere for conversations, so to say. All right, all right. Okay. Um, of course, every learner is different, so someone may not fit exactly into these descriptions. So they are generalizations that show likely but not fixed characteristics. But from looking at these differences, we can see that each age group needs to be taught in different ways. Okay, one more thing is your past language experience. Well, teenage and adult learners may have learned English before, and they may be used to learning in a particular way and have definite ideas about how to learn best. For example, an adult may have learned English at school through learning lots of grammar and may have been successful in learning this way. If he then finds himself in a class where the teaching is done just through asking learners to use language for communication, he may not like learning in this new way. Another adult may have learned by using translation at school and then come to a class in which translation is never used. Well, she may or may not like this change. Teenagers or adults, and sometimes teenagers or teenagers, teachers of adults, teachers of teenagers need to be aware of how their learners have learned previously and how they want to learn now. The learners may welcome a change in methods, but they may want to learn in the same way as they learned before. So teachers may need to discuss and explain their methods to learners who are unhappy with the new methods. They may also need to change their teaching to make the learner more comfortable and confident in their learning. All right, now, yeah, I just got this, this year I was experimenting with Padlet, and I just introduced this software to my class, and I had 4 girls in my group, and like there was a very, very even division. Like 2 of the girls were just like amazed by working in Padlet, whereas 2 other girls were like, what the piece of crap is that? We never, never, ever want to use it again. So you see, that shows that learning strategies and learning characteristics may be very, very different, even within the same age group. Okay, some key concepts and learner characteristics, right? So some ideas that are worth just paying attention to. Learners are not all the same. They do not all learn in the same way. Some learner characteristics, such as past language learning experience and learning strategies, are more relevant to teaching teenagers and adults than to teaching children. So we should always make this division between these age groups. We can find out what our learners' characteristics are by asking them, observing them, giving them questionnaires, asking at the end of a lesson whether they liked the activity done in the class and why, and in what different ways they might like to work. Learners' characteristics may not be fixed. We must not limit a learner by thinking they can only learn in a particular way. We can train learners to become aware of and use different learning strategies. It is not possible for the teacher of a big class to meet the learner characteristics of each learner all the time. Across a number of lessons, teachers can try to vary how they teach so that they can match the learner characteristics of a range of learners. Okay, that's it. Now we've got some practical thing to do. Well, you can see this Three wonderful guys, okay? So their names are Pablo, Pauline, and Tian, right? Try to remember these faces because then they're going to disappear and you're going to get some information on them. Well, okay, here comes the information about these guys. Have a close look. Now, the question is, how might their learner characteristics influence how they like to learn and how successful they are at learning English? I'm leaving you space here where you can make me a voice message. Please share with me your ideas. Thank you. Another thing, so match the classroom activities with the learning styles. So here we have a classroom activity. Reading a text slowly and carefully before answering questions. And we have got different learning styles that I have mentioned before. So what learning styles do you think this classroom activity corresponds to? Okay, you may have your variants, but mine are this reflective, right? Because you need time to think carefully before you answer the questions. That's reflection, of course. Playing a team running game. Group and kinesthetic, something to do with your body and with interaction with others. Writing in groups. Visual and group. So visual would, implement writing. Writing implements visual thing, and then yeah, as this writing in groups, there will be group activity. Okay. Discussing how to improve pronunciation. Well, discussion mostly implements reflective learning style and approach. Listening to stories. So definitely that would be auditory. Writing new vocabulary into an exercise book. Okay, that's mostly visual and individual. Writing a composition on your own. Again, the same thing, visual and individual. As speaking fluency activity. So that would mean something impulsive when you have to react on the spot, so to say. Thank you. Now, look at these classroom activities again. Well, do you think all these activities are suitable for both adults and young children's classes? Please leave your answer here or make me a voice message. I would really appreciate if you explained your choices and your point of view. Thank you very much. Now, your ideas. What do you think on the following questions? What is your learning style? What strategies do you use or have you used to help you learn English? Try to remember the list of strategies that I've mentioned. You can add any of your own. What is your past experience of learning English? So, what techniques have you used? What was the environment that you were learning your English in? And again, you can try to use some of the ideas from my lecture. Thank you. Optional activity for those who have got their kids, their students. Observe two of your learners and work out which learning styles they have. And describe these styles here or make me a voice message. You can contact you, text me, contact you, whatever way you like. Thanks a lot. Now we're coming up to the TKT part. Okay, match what the learner does with the learning strategies. So for example, the learner collects new vocabulary on cards and then sorts the cards into topics. What learning strategy is being used? And that is definitely be getting organized. The learner paraphrases to say something beyond his level of language. I would say that's taking risks, right? The learner guesses an unknown word from the context. Again, I will be taking risks. The learner compares a recent composition with an old one to see if she has made progress. Judging your own performance. The learner decides to buy a dictionary for use at home. Getting organized as well. The learner solves a problem with his classmates. Working with others. The learner records herself reading aloud and then listens to the recording to see if her pronunciation is good. Judging your own performance. Thank you very much for your hard work. I hope that was not super hard actually. And I wish you a good time, whatever day it is. Thank you. See you in the next lecture.